While volunteering my time and energy to help my parents renovate their home, I stepped into the garage to grab some tools, and accidentally uncovered a family secret I was never meant to see. Overheard my father remark, "I simply cannot comprehend his utter uselessness. We must exclude him from the inheritance before he completely depletes our resources." My mother responded, "It's already in progress. My legal counsel informs us we can even reclaim the business loan." I returned with my equipment and resumed my tasks, maintaining an unblemished smile. 3 days later, my mobile device was inundated with 47 urgent messages, pleading with me. "Thank you for joining me today. I trust you're experiencing a delightful day wherever you may be. I would be pleased if you could share in the comments which city or nation you're viewing from, and the current local time. Now let us commence our narrative together. You know, I never imagined I'd be here, divulging my innermost thoughts to a collection of online strangers at 3 in the morning, a glass of amber liquid my sole companion. I am Michael, 34 years of age, having established my construction enterprise from its nascent stages. It began with a dilapidated Ford F-150 and a toolkit, culminating in 3 crews managing projects throughout the county. My hands, hardened and scarred from years of transporting timber and wielding hammers, serve as testament to the existence I forged. It's not precisely a venture on Wall Street, but it is honorable work, it covers expenses, and it is unequivocally mine, pure effort and determination. That final point, "It's mine," was perpetually the point of contention with my parents, Richard and Eleanor. Upper middle class, meticulously maintained lawn, country club affiliation, the complete package. They desired me to attend their esteemed university, acquire a business degree, and don a formal suit. My hands represented a silent defiance they never pardoned. They enjoyed introducing me with a sigh. "This is our son, Michael. He's involved in construction." As if I were engaged in illicit activities, rather than constructing decks and undertaking renovations that genuinely enhance people's residences. My mother possessed a tight smile she employed when displeased, yet wished to appear amiable, her hand frequently rising to caress the pearl necklace she invariably wore. My father had a dismissive hand gesture, and a distinct throat-clearing sound that could render me feeling insignificant from across a room. For 34 years, I pursued an elusive phantom, the phantom of their affirmation. I attempted everything, achieved respectable grades despite the pressure, endeavored to converse with my father about golf even though I held no interest, endured countless charity galas with my mother, assenting to discussions about individuals whose most significant concern was selecting the appropriate caterer. I even accepted funds from them years ago, directly after university, to procure some initial machinery and sustain operations during my startup phase. They termed it a business loan. I considered it their belated demonstration of a modicum of trust. We never discussed terms, never executed documents. It felt more akin to a reluctant endowment, a means for them to feel involved, to possess a stake in the event I actually did not fail. I opted to believe it was an act of encouragement. That was my blind spot, I suppose, believing they operated from a place of authentic support, not manipulation. I desperately yearned to hear them utter, "We're proud of you, Michael." That straightforward declaration was the ultimate prize I incessantly pursued. The past few years, matters had settled into a strained routine, courteous holiday dinners, brief, awkward telephone conversations. My elder sister, Catherine, 38, was their exemplary offspring, business school, corporate ascent, a successful marriage. She conformed perfectly to their expectations. Our rapport was civil, remote. We shared little in common beyond childhood recollections that now seemed to hold divergent meanings for us. We existed on the periphery of each other's lives, linked solely by the parental star around which we both uncomfortably orbited. I convinced myself it was acceptable. This was family, wasn't it? You accept the favorable with the less favorable. Then arrived the refurbishment. Mother and father resolved to append a sunroom to the rear of their already expansive residence. Father contacted me, sounding uncharacteristically hesitant. "Michael, we were contemplating, with your proficiency, would you consider supervising the structural aspect and perhaps managing some of the framework?" We would, of course, compensate you at your customary rate. It was the nearest they had ever come to acknowledging my competence. A warmth diffused through my chest, modest and delicate yet present. Perhaps, just perhaps, this was it, an opportunity to connect, to demonstrate to them I wasn't so unproductive after all. I consented instantly, offering a substantial reduction on my labor. For family, I stated, striving to keep the anticipation from my tone. I commenced work on the blueprints, coordinating with their architect, and then initiated the demolition and preliminary framing. It was arduous physical labor, but gratifying. Being back in the dwelling where I matured felt peculiar. Every family photograph on the wall, every piece of furniture felt both recognizable and alien, like visiting a gallery of someone else's existence. The aroma of inherited wealth and polished timber presented a stark contrast to the sawdust and perspiration I now carried with me. But that week, something felt amiss. It wasn't the usual strain, like when father's golf swing was off or mother was anxious about her garden club fundraiser. This was distinct, palpable. The atmosphere in the house felt dense with unspoken words, like the oppressive humidity preceding a summer tempest. They were agitated, checking their phones when they believed I wasn't observing, whispering in secluded areas, abruptly altering the topic when I entered a room. "Oh, Michael, we were just discussing the climate," Mother would chirp, her smile excessively bright, her gaze flitting away, her hand moving to her pearls. Father would simply clear his throat dismissively, a sound that invariably caused my stomach to tighten. They began taking calls in another room, their voices hushed and urgent. After 34 years, one develops an intuition for their particular brand of disquiet. It felt as though they were concealing something significant, something concerning me. I attempted to dismiss it. Perhaps they were experiencing financial difficulties they wished not to disclose. Perhaps the renovation was exceeding their cost expectations. I did not press. I merely continued working, continued framing, endeavoring to construct this addition for them, hoping it would forge a link between us. It was exhausting, this pretense of normalcy, this perpetual struggle against the tightening knot in my gut. The house, typically a place of reluctant familiarity, began to feel unwelcoming, every creaking floorboard an accusation, every flawless picture frame a verdict. It was Thursday afternoon. The framing was progressing well, but I required a specific saw attachment. From the garage. I wiped the perspiration from my brow with the back of my hand, leaving a streak of sawdust and grime, and proceeded towards the side entrance. The garage was not merely a garage, it was crammed with decades of their lives, containers of old tax documents, dusty golf clubs, gardening supplies, faded plastic storage bins filled with who knows what. It smelled of fuel, fertilizer, and aged paper, a scent that was somehow both evocative and vaguely stifling. As I reached for the handle, I detected their voices, low, urgent, emanating from just inside. They were speaking about me. My hand froze on the doorknob. My heart did not merely throb, it commenced attempting to jackhammer its way out of my chest. Every drop of blood in my system turned frigid. The words struck me like a physical blow, robbing me of breath. "I still can't believe how useless he is," I heard my father declare. His voice, usually so composed and measured, was laced with exasperation and disdain. "We need to cut him out of the will before he drains us dry." Drains us dry. Useless? After I offered my time, my expertise, my reduced-rate labor to construct their wretched sunroom? After the years I spent striving? The phrase, "for the good of the family," echoed mockingly in my memory. Then my mother's voice, cool and sharp like fractured ice. "Already working on it. My lawyer says we can even take back the business loan." The business loan? The one I believed was an act of trust? They were attempting to weaponize it, to recall funds provided years ago, funds I had utilized to establish the very enterprise they disparaged. Not merely disinherit me, but reclaim whatever they could, labeling me a burden. The treachery was a physical force, striking me in the abdomen, causing me to double over just outside the door. My lungs felt crushed, as if someone had wrapped barbed wire around them. All the years of effort, all the disregarded affronts, all the subtle taunts, They converged into this single, brutal, overheard dialogue. This was the truth. This was their true nature. My family. Somehow, I straightened up. The pain was immediate, scorching, but it was swiftly eclipsed by a cold, firm resolve I did not know I possessed. I would not grant them the gratification of knowing I had overheard, not yet. I opened the garage door, the aged springs groaning, masking the sound of my ragged breathing. I entered, my gaze scanning for the attachment, my countenance a blank facade. My parents were standing near the rear, appearing startled, like children discovered with their hands in the cookie jar. Only the cookie jar contained my future. "Oh, Michael, just, searching for some old photographs," Mother stated too quickly, a nervous tremor in her hands moving directly to her pearls. "Yeah, just clearing some items out," Father added, evading my gaze, giving a small, dismissive throat clear. "Found it," I declared, my voice sounding unnaturally tranquil, devoid of emotion. I located the attachment, grasped it, and turned back. All right, back to work. I exited that garage, leaving a part of myself behind, the hopeful son, the one who still yearned for their pride. When I returned to the sunroom frame, I affixed the attachment to the saw. My hands trembled, not solely from the exertion, but from the suppressed fury and anguish. I compelled myself to concentrate, to measure, to cut, to nail. With every swing of the hammer, I was not merely constructing a sunroom, I was interring the former Michael. I affixed a flawless smile to my face when they came to inspect the progress, asking casual inquiries about materials, about the time frame. It felt fragile, like glass on the verge of shattering, but it endured. The endeavor of maintaining that facade was exhausting, draining me more than the physical labor. The aroma of freshly cut wood, usually a comfort, now felt contaminated. I concluded for the day, packed my equipment, and drove home. The instant I closed my front door behind me, the facade shattered. I collapsed to the floor in my living room, the sawdust and dirt still clinging to me, and finally permitted the torrents of agony to engulf me. I wept. I raged. I struck the sofa cushion until my knuckles ached. 34 years. 34 years of striving, and this was the outcome, useless, a burden, something to be excised, drained dry. But beneath the pain, something else was stirring, cold, hard determination. They had made their move. They were engaging legal representation. They were planning. This was not merely familial discord, this was a hostile takeover of my past, an attempt to dictate my future and revise history. The business loan, it was not a loan in any true sense. It was initial capital provided when I possessed nothing, framed as a means to assist me in building something which, in turn, reflected, perhaps not glory, but at least something they could point to. They were attempting to transform a supposed gift into leverage, into an instrument. I would not simply acquiesce. My years in construction had educated me about foundations, about structure, about what transpires when things are unstable or built on decaying timber. My family's foundation was unsound, but I had erected my own sturdy framework, my enterprise, my existence. It was time to safeguard it. They were employing underhanded tactics. Very well, I could employ strategy. I retrieved my laptop, began sifting through old electronic mail, bank statements from a decade past, delving. I vaguely recalled signing something, but it felt informal, a mere formality to appease them, not a genuine loan agreement. Amidst the turmoil, I contacted my friend Mark. He's an old companion from secondary school, now a property attorney. I hesitated to involve him in my convoluted family drama, but I required impartial counsel. I presented everything: the overheard conversation, the will, the business loan, my parents' recent peculiar conduct. Mark listened patiently, his voice calm and unwavering, a lifeline in the tempest I was navigating. "Okay, first off, man, I'm genuinely sorry you're experiencing this," he stated. His simple empathy was a balm. It made me realize how isolated I felt, how much I had normalized their behavior. "That's messed up. Family matters like that are the worst." He validated my emotions, my suspicion that this was not typical conflict but calculated cruelty. He offered preliminary guidance, Inheritance law is intricate, but disinheriting a child is generally straightforward, unless specific commitments were made that could be substantiated. Regarding the loan, he affirmed that without a formal, signed accord with explicit terms, especially after so many years, it would be incredibly challenging for them to legally enforce it. It sounded, as he phrased it, like a gift they're trying to retroactively redefine as a loan for leverage. This confirmation felt like a solid beam being added to my shaky internal framework. It wasn't all in my head. I wasn't useless. Then I informed him about the refurbishment, the substantial labor I had already invested, the materials I had financed or was accountable for. His legal mind immediately became active. Michael, you're a contractor, right? Working on their property? Have you billed them for the work and materials yet? No, not yet. I was going to sort it out when the framing phase was complete. Offered a discount, for family. The irony tasted like ashes. Okay, here's a notion, Mark declared, his voice firm. If you have an agreement to be compensated, or even an implied agreement based on the scope of work you're undertaking, you can file something called a mechanic's lien against the property. It's a legal claim that ensures you receive payment for the value you've added. It would prevent them from selling or refinancing without resolving your claim. It would also immediately halt their project. It was a potent, immediate point of leverage, directly linked to my expertise and the work I was already performing on their residence. It was the ideal countermaneuver, strategic, legal, and struck them where it hurt most, their property and their schemes. It was no longer about the monetary compensation for the renovation work itself. It was about asserting my worth and safeguarding myself from being excluded and exploited. Over the subsequent day, I assembled the necessary documentation for the lien, estimates, material receipts, a record of my hours. I drafted a formal invoice for the work completed thus far, even with the promised family reduction. And I continued excavating through digital archives. Then I discovered it, tucked away in an old cloud storage directory from when I had assisted them in setting up a new computer years ago, a scanned document labeled Michael Loan Terms Draft. It was not signed by me, but it was a clear internal document detailing their conditions, an exorbitant interest rate, a demand clause they could activate at any moment, and a chilling notation in the margin in my mother's handwriting. Ensure this is legally sound to protect assets/leverage inheritance discussions. It was damning proof that they had invariably viewed it as a tether, not assistance. Finding this draft, observing their cold calculation in black and white, solidified my resolve. The pain was still present, a dull ache, but it was now fueled by righteous indignation. They were not merely being emotionally distant, they were being financially manipulative and legally predatory. This was the tangible evidence that transformed their overheard conspiracy into a demonstrable pattern of conduct. Mark connected me with a colleague who specialized in property law and liens. We reviewed everything. The strategy was sound: file the lien immediately, formally dispute the business loan based on the evidence and absence of a valid agreement. Do not engage emotionally, communicate through legal channels. It felt surreal, planning legal action against my own parents. It contravened every ingrained instinct of familial allegiance, every lesson about honoring your mother and father. But that garage conversation, that draft document, they had severed that loyalty first. They had revealed to me their definition of family, and it was a transaction, a means to an end. On Monday morning, less than 3 full days after I overheard them, my lawyer filed the mechanic's lien against their property. The paperwork was submitted, the claim registered. The mechanisms were in motion. There was no retreat. I proceeded with my day, managing my crews, endorsing invoices, on the surface, just a typical Monday. But internally, I was bracing myself, anticipating. The messages commenced around lunchtime. First, a single text from my mother. Michael, call me immediately. There's an issue with the house. Then one from my father. What is this legal absurdity? Call us now. And then they began to pour in like a ruptured dam. My phone vibrated ceaselessly in my pocket, a constant hum against my thigh. I extracted it, and simply observed them accumulate on my lock screen, 47 messages from both of them in just a few hours. I did not respond. I simply watched. I witnessed the progression, a descent into panic, initial bewilderment. What is this lien? Why did the county call? Our permits are on hold? Escalating fury. How dare you do this? You're sabotaging us. Your father is furious. Panic. The builders left. We can't continue the work. We're losing money every day. Gaslighting. This is a misunderstanding. Just call us and we'll explain. You're overreacting, Michael. Don't do anything rash. You're hurting your mother. Think about the family reputation. Pleading. Please, just call us. We can fix this. Don't do this to your own family. We love you, son. Let's talk like family. We love you, son. The words felt like ashes in my mouth after what I had heard just days prior. The rapidity and volume of their reaction were astonishing. It was pure, unadulterated panic that I had struck them where they were most vulnerable, their finances and their meticulously preserved image. The renovation halting abruptly was public evidence that something was gravely amiss, a very conspicuous fissure in their perfect facade for the entire neighborhood to witness. This was a moment of vindication for me, observing them scramble, observing their control shatter. It wasn't about reveling. It was about the sheer, stark reality that their panic was proof of their culpability, proof that they had intended to harm me and were now confronting repercussions they never foresaw because I dared to assert myself. They believed I was useless, but my useless profession had just frozen their assets. Then, amidst the pandemonium, a message from Catherine. Her initial message was cautious. Hey Mike, what's happening with Mom and Dad? They seem really upset about the house. Seemingly innocent, concerned sister. My heart gave a small, foolish leap. Perhaps she was unaware. Perhaps she could serve as a mediator, someone who perceived reason. But then came the follow-up a few minutes later. They said something about a lien? Is this true? They're saying you're trying to cause trouble. You should just talk to them and sort it out. Don't listen to outside advice. This is family. We handle things internally. Don't listen to outside advice. We handle things internally. That phrasing, it mirrored things my parents had uttered in the past, attempting to isolate me, control my perspective, keep their secrets contained. And the swiftness with which she adopted their narrative, portraying my legal defense as causing trouble, implicitly blaming me, it struck me hard. She wasn't an unsuspecting bystander caught in the middle, she wasn't an ally. She was aligned with them, part of the unit, perhaps even cognizant of their plans, or at least quick to conform and exert pressure. The sister I thought might offer a shred of comprehension was just another extension of their control and judgment, employing the same manipulative language. It was a different kind of betrayal than my parents' cold plotting, the betrayal of a potential bond, but equally painful. The family unit I had yearned to be fully embraced into didn't just exclude me. It actively worked against me, even the sibling connection proving fragile and conditional. I did not reply to any of them, not to the frantic parents, not to the subtly manipulative sister. I spent the evening in quiet contemplation, the stillness of my own apartment a welcome contrast to the ceaseless buzzing of my phone. The pain was still present, a profound ache, but it was cleaner now, less confusion, more clarity. They had all revealed to me who they were and who they were not. They were not a safe haven, they were a tempest I needed to navigate away from. Over the next few weeks, the legal proceedings unfolded. There were strained exchanges between my legal representative and theirs. They initially blustered, threatening countersuits, attempting to depict me as the aggressor, the ungrateful son who was ruining his unfortunate parents' lives. But the evidence I possessed regarding the Michael Loan Terms draft document was potent. It demonstrated intent and directly contradicted their assertions of a formal, acknowledged obligation. My lawyer firmly refuted their accusations, presenting my case for the mechanics lien based on the valid work performed. The leverage was undeniable. They could not proceed with the renovation, which was now a partially completed shell, an eyesore. They could not readily sell the house or refinance to cover the escalating costs and legal expenditures that were accumulating. Their public standing was suffering among their neighbors and the community they held in such high regard. People converse when a major renovation abruptly ceases and legal professionals become involved. The frantic messages ceased, replaced by cold, formal communication through legal channels. The outcome was not a cinematic conclusion, and that is acceptable. It was authentic. The business loan matter was resolved. My lawyer successfully argued it was never a formal debt, and the draft documents substantiated their manipulative intent. I did not attempt to recover more than the principal sum I had initially received years ago, declining any interest or additional payment they attempted to offer to expedite its resolution. It was not about financial gain, it was about justice and principle. I also received equitable remuneration for the renovation work I had completed, including materials. The family relationship, it was irrevocably altered. There were no sincere apologies, no sudden epiphanies on their part. Their final communications, even through legal representatives, conveyed a hint of resentment, a sensation that I had wronged them by not quietly accepting their plan and daring to resist. Their characteristic behaviors, the dismissive throat clear, the pearl touching, the passive-aggressive language, were now merely painful memories, symbols of a toxic dynamic I had escaped. Catherine ceased messaging me entirely. I heard from a distant relative that she was informing her acquaintances I had exploited our parents, and had always been challenging. The facade remained robust for the external world, but the core was fractured. The hurt, losing the prospect of the family I had always desired, pained deeply. There is a singular form of sorrow in grieving relationships with individuals who are still alive but opt not to genuinely perceive or value you. For a period, I felt a hollow ache, a void where the yearning for their approval once resided.